Salutations to the Truth Core, whoever and wherever you may be on this planet. Here I am once again. Surprise, surprise. It's, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting here with a vodka tonic and carefully sliding myself into position to talk to you about the Trickster. And not just any Trickster, but the Archontic Trickster, who is unique among all tricksters, and there are many, as I will soon explain. Now, why am I doing this again? Why am I talking to you right now? Well, lately, something has compelled me to take a good look at myself and ask, what can I really do to contribute to the current situation, the attempted crime against humanity, the takeover, nothing less than the takeover of every aspect of life by those who are behind the Coyote regime? What can I actually do? And of course, I know, and you know, probably, that there are some good people, you can find them on the internet, who are talking about the problem. Many voices of honest and courageous people who are warning about what's happening, and they're exposing the scam. They're exposing this hideous assault on everything that is good, true, beautiful, free in life. I don't merely want to repeat what those people are saying. Most of them are talking about the problem and the dangers we are facing in the world today. And that is really important. That's a really important commitment. Some of them are talking about a solution. I've decided it's time to start talking about the solution in the way that I can, in my unique way. And so that's what I'll do, and we'll see how it comes across to you, and I'll take it from there. One thing I want to say about contributing to the solution of the problem is this. I've said before that I don't like to propose anything that I'm not doing myself. Well, over the last week or so, I've come up with some possible tactics that I myself might employ. And so my intention in this talk and whatever comes next is simply to lay out what I'm thinking about and present you with kind of a sketch of what I would call adversarial tactics or anti-reset activism. Clear enough? That being my intention, the takeaway of this talk will be one simple and elementary tactic. And you could consider the tactic that I'm going to propose to be the basis of all other tactics that might be undertaken in pushing back against the Coyote regime. Now, I'm not going to elaborate at any length about the figure of the trickster. I'll just put it fast and simple. I'll give you a quick introduction. The trickster is a figure that appears all over the world in mythology, folklore, and legend. It's one of the universal archetypal figures in the cultures of the many races of the anthropos, the anthropine species. For example, in Native American lore, Coyote is certainly the best known trickster. In Scandinavian lore, you have Loki. In Greek myth, you have Hermes the trickster. And there are hundreds of other examples, particularly in African cultures. There are many, many examples of the trickster. It's a figure that doesn't belong exactly to the genre of mythology, but more to the genre of folklore and legend. But it has a certain mythological dimension. So here are two essential things you need to know about the trickster figure. First is that the trickster messes with your mind. And it does so in a variety of ways. Essentially, however, the trickster does things, performs stunts, antics, hide-and-seek tactics, all kinds of trickery that you can imagine in order to confuse the people. So, for instance, if you go and you look at the tales of the trickster in, say, the lore of the Navajo in the American West, you'll find that the trickster is always there messing with the local people and basically subverting their common sense. So the trickster has this primary tactic to mess with your common sense. Therefore, the trickster does things that don't make sense. And if you look at the situation in the world today, you might easily conclude that there might be a trickster in the works, because just about everything that is coming out from the authorities about quantum 19 is confusing and contradictory. So you have there the evidence of the presence of the trickster in your life right now in real time. Second element in the tactics of the trickster is the supernatural or paranormal. The trickster is what is technically called in comparative mythology a liminal figure. Liminal means on the border of something. So the trickster actually often operates on the border of the supernatural or the paranormal. So additional to the way that the trickster messes around with common sense, it also messes around with the human perception and intuition of the paranormal or supernatural. That supernatural factor is always inherent in one place or another in stories about the trickster. Again, if you look at current events, you'll find that there is something like a supernatural factor at the center of the narrative of quantum 19. The microbial entity itself is something like a supernatural factor. It's paranormal, it's weird, it's mysterious. No one knows exactly how it works. No one knows even if it really exists. In fact, there is no scientific and medical evidence that it does exist, but it affects an influence nonetheless. So you see how this supernatural or paranormal element is present also in real-time events right now in the world. Finally, and this is really, really a key issue, I have to say that I have researched the figure of the trickster in considerable depth. Yeah, big surprise. What haven't I researched in considerable depth? Well, come to think of it, I haven't researched the sexual performance and behavior of identical twins. Now, I don't mean Siamese twins joined at the hip. I mean identical twins who might join me at the hip. I haven't had the opportunity to research that area in depth. Goddess knows I've thought about it. Now, where was I? Yes. And what I have concluded is quite remarkable. I've concluded that the profile of tricksters across the realm of world mythology, folklore, and legend is relatively consistent in this respect. The figure of the trickster never comes out as being evil or bad. It performs dirty tricks. Sometimes it acts obscenely. And it can also do harm or screw things up. But basically, it's not evil. But on the other hand, it's not good either. So the general profile of the trickster that I draw from my research leads me to the conclusion that the traditional trickster is amoral. However, I have detected one unique case of the trickster which is genuinely and profoundly evil. That is the Archontic trickster. You may recall that among the many things I've said about the Gnostics, I've indicated that they warned the world about the presence of an alien extraterrestrial influence, the Archons. And they were specific in profiling the Archons and in describing their behavior. And they characterized them as anti-life, anti-human, and genuinely evil in the influence that they have through the insidious manner in which they impart their mindset to human animals. Now, Carlos Castaneda had a wonderful expression for this act of archontic intrusion. He said that there is a foreign installation in the human mind. And he talked about the mud shadows and the flyers, who are in fact exactly the same as the Archons. I've written a great deal about the parallelisms between Castaneda's Neo-Toltec sorcery and the teachings of the Gnostics from the mystery schools. So the Archonic trickster stands in a class by itself. And due to its origin, due to its makeup, you could say that it has the blind intention to destroy humanity in the same way that a massive horde of locusts would destroy a field of corn or a field of grain. You can't say that the locusts who have a hive mentality have an intention in the same way that you and I have intentions, or that other animals such as cats and cows and whales have intentions. They have what I would call blind intention. And in fact, the Gnostics indicated that the overlord of the Archontic horde was blind, is blind. So you have to use the word intention very carefully. But certainly I think it's fair to say, after all these years, I dare to say, and it must be true because it rhymes, that yes, the Archontic Trickster operates on an extremely evil intention to destroy human sanity, human goodness, and life itself. The Archons would seek to destroy life on this planet, first of all, because they can't invade the planet, even though they would like to, but oxygen is toxic to them. And secondly, because, as the Gnostics indicated, they envy us. Now, the nature of envy is different from the nature of jealousy. I may be jealous of my neighbor who has, say, a champagne gold Maserati, but I don't go out and shoot him or destroy his Maserati. I'm simply jealous. I'd love to have one myself. But if I'm envious of him, then I would do something grave, something destructive, because the nature of envy is to destroy what you envy so that the person who has it can no longer have it. And that is what drives the Archons, envy. And the Gnostics said that explicitly. I ain't making this up. So now at 17 minutes, with that brief introduction on the Archonic Trickster, I'm going to propose a tactic, and not just a tactic, my friends, but the foundation of all other tactics. You might have noticed, I'm sure you did, that the title of this talk is not merely how to defeat the Archonic Trickster, but there are 4 other words, 2 by 2, separated with a comma. Now, you know how I work. You should know by now. You ought to. And the more you know it, the more you enjoy it. I am extremely precise with syntax. I know that the syntax I use reaches your NLP. As if, as is. Contemplate that for a moment. As if, as is. That's the tactic. That's the NLP code for the tactic. All through my life, I've thought about writing novels, and I've tried a few times. And at one point, I had this idea, which is purely autistic, that I would write 2 novels. And I would call one of them As Is, and the title of the other would be As If. And these 2 novels would be exactly the same length, say 172 pages each, and they would describe exactly the same characters and events. But the first volume, As Is, would describe everything in one way, and then the second volume, As If, would describe the same events in another way, but not just in any other way. The second volume, As If, would describe the events and characters in the first volume to show that they were only pretending to do what they did. So when you read the first volume, it would come across like a straight narrative. This character, that character, the other character, they're interacting, they're doing these things. And that's how it is. The novel describes what they did as is, as it actually unfolded. But the other novel would describe the same events in a way that showed that the events in the first novel were not what they appeared to be, due to the fact that the characters were only pretending to do what they did. I told you it was autistic. Now, this gets even better. And the opportunity for this tactic is so perfect that I could not resist telling you about it, explaining it to you so that you can actually begin to use it. What triggered me recently, very recently, was something that happened in the UK. Now, you may have noticed that even though there's a pandemic going on, people are flopping over at the dinner table and dying in the streets massively, somehow it appears, oddly, mysteriously, that there isn't really any evidence of that. And consequently, the authorities, in their attempt to get the entire world to line up for the prick, are having a really hard time. So they're facing something that is now euphemistically called vaccine hesitancy. And so in the UK, they are launching a huge, huge campaign to persuade the public to go and get the prick. And they are expending enormous millions of pounds on this. And airtime, press time in the newspapers, full page ads. And get this, one of these ads recently advised the public. You know what that means? It means told them to obey in this language. They said, act as if you have it. You're being asked, you're being told to act as if you have it. They actually said that. When I saw that, I practically jumped out of my skin. I realized at that moment that the Archontic Trickster had overplayed its hand. And I said to myself, or myself said to me, can't remember exactly how it went, play that hand back to it right now. So, this is what you do. You play a double game. You act as if you are in compliance. You act as if you are concerned about the pandemic. You are deeply concerned about the public resistance to getting the prick. And you are totally on board with that program. So you could say, for instance, I'm really concerned about what we can do, every single person, to end the pandemic. Because we want to get back to life. We want to get back to all those liberties, pleasures that we enjoy that make life worth living. So certainly, I support all efforts to end the pandemic. So you talk and you think as if You are supporting the authorities in their program to end the pandemic. However, the reference to pandemic in your mind is different from the reference it has according to the authorities. See, the authorities claim that there is a pandemic of a viral infection of a mysterious microbe. Correct? Fine. So you play along with that. But whenever you say or think the word pandemic, you don't think of it as is stated by the authorities. You think of it as if the pandemic was a plague of insanity. So, if I say, I am really concerned about ending this pandemic, what I'm actually saying, the intention behind what I'm saying, is different and contrary to the intention of those words interpreted according to the narrative of the authorities. Are you with me on this? The tactic is simple. You approach every instance in which you have any occasion to communicate with others or interact with others regarding this event, and you assert your heartfelt desire to end the pandemic of insanity, not the pandemic as defined by the authorities, but you use the same language. You double deal the card back to the Archontic Trickster in that way. And may I be so bold as to propose that you can do it mischievously and with enjoyment, and you can have fun doing this and playing this card in this way. You never reveal your hand. You don't reveal the card you're playing. But the card that you do reveal appears to be as is, according to the authorities, but you know that the actual face value of that card is as if. And so in a way, you're doing exactly what the Archontic Trickster wants you to do, acting as if you have it, and you're turning that trick back upon it. Now, it may not be clear at the outset when I introduce this, but I assure you, this is a powerful tactic of psychological warfare. It's an indefeatable tactic. You have to practice it. You have to talk about it with your accomplices and friends who are on the inside of the trick. Don't talk about it to people. Don't talk about the trick to people that you're going to use it on. That would be ridiculous. That would be completely counterproductive. But consider it. Look at it from different angles. Consider the different ways you could play that card with friends, relatives, or on the occasion when you are face to face with some authorities, whether they be at the lowest level of dupes and pawns in the street, or perhaps on some occasion, some authority a little further up, a little higher up in the hierarchy of control. I'm going to leave it there right now. Finally, just to impress on you the importance of cultivating that edge. You know what pandemic you want to see end. But you can talk as if you are talking about the other one. It's wild, isn't it? It's a bit mad, really. I have to say, I really love it. And I'm pretty confident that it'll work, given that you devote the time and attention to work it skillfully and correctly. Enough said, and I'll be seeing you in the beauty